It's simple. I will be doing the world a favor by laying down a low life that would stab a classmate in the back, then leave said innocent's face down in a puddle of blood. He merely strived to take out a fearsome beast, and unsuspectingly, weak trash took advantage of his weakness. But thankfully I, Zhou Qi, was passing by and witnessed the entire sad sight, infuriating me to the point where I had no other choice but to kill the scumbag known as Chu Mo. I'm sure that story would pan out. Who wouldn't believe it? Chu Mo expected nothing less from the biggest pain in his backside. The whole situation was kind of sad, seeing as how Zhou Qi had no deep hatred for the weak human. Being such a weakling only meant that his fortune of being the fiancé of Chen Zaiwei easily became his misfortune. Chu Mo had no choice but to agree. Zhou Qi couldn't believe this trash had the nerve to be arrogant. The fool really didn't understand the position he was in. At this point, his opinion didn't matter. No matter what came out of his mouth, his death was assured. Zhou Qi was thinking too deeply. Chu Mo was simply agreeing that everything the pompous rich kid was saying was true. The two of them had no deep hatred, and Chen Zaiwei was indeed his fiancée. So, because of this, he politely asked Zhou Qi to die. The speed and force of the attack caught the pompous fool off guard. It came as a surprise that the person who he believed to be a weak loser had merely been pretending to be an ordinary person. Even with the advantage of a surprised attack, he had come nowhere near injuring his enemy. The speed was simply mind-boggling. But after all, that was to be expected of the wind attribute talent. For all his intentions to be the first to strike, he was now on the receiving end of a fearsome blow with no means to dodge. With the choice made for him, he unleashed his thunder element directly into the incoming wind attack. The two abilities clashed, with Chu Mo's lightning breaking through, continuing its trajectory toward his foe. Zhou Qi retreated to higher ground. For the thunder element to break through his sky-breaking blade meant he was dealing with an enemy that at the very least was on his level. Everyone knew that Chu Mo was a waste of space who couldn't cultivate to save his life. None of this made any sense. It simply shouldn't be possible. When had it ever been wise to believe the things you saw with your eyes? Chu Mo had learned a long time ago that believing the things you saw was bound to get you killed. He didn't expect the efforts of his training to come in handy so soon. All the effort he put into precise control of his thunder attribute talent meant he was in possession of an ability that Zhou Qi would find hard to simply sidestep. Floating motes of lightning appeared around Chu Mo. A simple hand gesture was all that was needed to send them after his enemy. As Zhou Qi prepared to retreat from his perch, he could honestly say that this level of elemental control was drifting into a realm above what either of them should be capable of. As it was, he had no fear of his enemy. After all, what could someone without a wind attribute talent do to him? Zhou Qi made sure his claims were understood, easily avoiding every instance of danger Chu Mo sent his way, before appearing out of thin air to prove that the opposite couldn't be said for his enemy. Chu Mo, by luck alone, managed to make it out of the range of the wind's slash. His pampered enemy, who was slowly descending into insanity, did all he could to display the permanent gap that would always remain between the two. Reluctantly, Chu Mo agreed with his insight. No matter how strong he was, it simply didn't matter if he didn't have what it took to lay a blow upon his target. If his enemy relied solely upon his speed, eventually Chu Mo's defense would fail. He was now more sure than ever that he had to get his hand on a wind attribute talent. Besides the speed, it also seemed to increase the user's reaction time to an unusually high level. Chu Mo relaxed his mind. He had to find the truth that would lead him to victory. Zhou Qi fully intended to kill him. With that being so, his final destination would always be in close proximity to his location. With this simple mindset, he was sure his enemy's trajectory could be predicted. Chu Mo relaxed his mind and focused on the realities before him. Zhou Qi had last appeared in his 9 o'clock direction, with an attack frequency of 4 to 6 seconds. All he needed to do was take into account his enemy's logical movement, and his next appearance could easily be calculated. Chu Mo fell into a deep trance. His senses became so sharp it was as if time had begun to slow around him. In this state, he was easily able to track Zhou Qi's progress. At a very precise moment, he loaded up an attack and sent the lightning arrow hurling towards his foe. Zhou Qi had no idea what was headed in his direction, and the moment he became aware, all he could do was accept the fate that awaited him. With meticulous accuracy, the lightning arrow landed dead center, slamming its target into the closest tree. This was impossible. How had he managed to land in this position? Burning from the inside and out, at the mercy of trash that wasn't even on his level. Chumo stepped towards Zhou Qi. His intent could be seen plainly in his eyes. Unsurprisingly, the fool had been so wrapped up in himself that he was only just now realizing that he was the one being hunted. Being who he was, he instantly turned to threats to save his life. But quickly realized that Chu Mo could care less who his father was. So, he turned to the next best thing, bribery. But he quickly learned that he wasn't dealing with his usual suspects, as a boot came down on his chest. They were way past that point, so he might as well just close his trap, finishing what he started the very next moment. Target: Zhou Qi can be harvested. Do you want to harvest? Chumo hoped this would be the case. He would put Zhou Qi's wind attribute talent to good use. Chumo wasted no time assimilating the wind element. The feeling of freedom was instant. He shot from the ground with a speed that was simply exhilarating. He couldn't help but zoom around the forest as if he was the wind himself. And that was exactly what it felt like. Like he had somehow managed to merge with the wind. The wind attribute talent had made him 3 times faster than he was before, increasing both his body control and agility in the process. He couldn't get enough of it, bouncing from tree to tree like a kid who just received a new toy, before dropping from the sky at full speed. The wind attribute's talent more than lived up to its reputation. Chu Mo was intent on salvaging everything he could, chances where he was going to need it. The system's energy enveloped his hand, before harvesting for the first time a skill. The bronze-level martial skill, Sky-Breaking Blade, to be exact. The hoarding system was indeed turning out to be too powerful. As he consumed the skill, a smile broke out on his face. Never in a million years did he expect to receive an item that would be comparable to this trial's first-place reward. The sensation of learning the skill was like nothing he had ever felt. It was as if his body and his mind were relearning something they had always known, but somehow forgotten. Sky-Breaking Blade had 3 levels. By learning the first level, you could manage to cover your blade in a layer of light. And as you progress to the 3rd and final level, your blade will consist primarily of light. He was sure Zhou Qi had only managed to reach the 1st level. While merely being the beginning, it wasn't anything to scoff at. But he intended to take it to its max as fast as possible. For at that level, it being able to reach a distance of over 30 meters would make it a godlike skill. To his surprise, the hoarding system wasn't done yet. Detected. The collection target has a special item that can be collected. Collect? Yes, no. Was the system serious? Why wouldn't he want an item that was described as special? Hoarding successful. Treasure map obtained. The system was starting to show no bounds. Being able to reproduce what amounted to a personal item was something else. The anticipation was too much. He cast the map outwards in order to see exactly what made it so special. And boy, did it not disappoint. The map pointed towards the Earth Dragon's nest. There was no way this map pointed to the legendary heavenly treasure. He knew of the rumors, but never believed them to be true. A treasure that was capable of enhancing one's talent and physique was hidden somewhere in this section of the region. He always assumed it being a story that everyone knew meant it was merely a fairy tale. If he was going to harvest his landfall, he needed to get moving. But first, the family of Zhou Qi was an enemy he couldn't compete with at the moment. He had to dispose of all evidence that tied this to him. He would scour this fool's body. After all, he was a real believer in wasting not wanting not. And in that fashion, before he headed to the dragon's nest, he would need to stop by a certain spirit beehive. He searched for the hive until the moon rose high into the sky, but there was no doubt it would be worth it. He was in awe as the golden liquid siphoned from the hive into his canister. But that enthusiasm quickly fled as all he managed to retrieve was half a canister of the precious liquid. The small amount, at best, would only pull him through 10 days of cultivation. Including the spirit bee's nectar, so far in the trial, he had collected 21 bottles of fierce beast blood, of which 6 came from the rampaging giant bear. 8 of the bottles came from the poor classmate who was killed by the bear. And the last 7 bottles were obtained from the other fierce beasts he put down. He was left with a conundrum. When he searched Zhou Qi, all he found was a knife and a bag. The bag seemed completely suspect. It had a feeling that he just couldn't put his hands on. Actually, the more he thought about it, when Zhou Qi arrived, he didn't have a knife in his possession. Chu Mo's eyes landed squarely on the bag. The only way he could think to activate such an item was to inject his qi into it, with the hopes that it wasn't tied to its original owner. As the bag began to glow, a blue aura rushed outwards. Chu Mo fell backward as the contents of the bag hovered within his reach. It made sense that the Zhou family had access to such an absorbingly expensive item. Storage bags were so rare that there was little to no chance that a normal cultivator would come across one in their entire life. On top of being rare, the majority of its contents were the equally sought-after yuan stones. To go from being dirt poor to have such wealth was outrageous. If he had to estimate, there were at least 600 pieces of low-grade yuan stones, along with 12 portions of fierce beast blood, of which 3 of those were of the second level. Yuan stones were a unique mineral formed in the wake of the profound shifts in the natural order, owing its existence to the nurturing essence of yuan qi. This extraordinary substance boasts energy that can be harnessed by martial artists, making it a coveted currency within the martial community. He had to admit that Zhou Qi at least had good taste. Chu Mo added his belongings to his new hoard of wealth. A simple order of collect was all that was needed for the bag to snap up into his hands. There was one thing that was for certain: not a living soul could be allowed to lay their eyes upon this bag. He knew plenty of cultivators who would kill for it. And that was without saying what the Zhou family would do if they knew it had come into his possession. Now that that was out of the way, it was time to see if the spirit bee nectar was worth all the effort. He tipped the canister back, allowing the honey to slide down his throat. This was completely different than the intense pain received from ingesting fierce beast blood. Chu Mo relaxed as the healing sensation spread throughout his body, like a warm current flowing down his body's pathways, repairing damage as it went. The experience dropped him into a trance, as he did his best to allow the nectar the access it needed to work its miracle. Who could fault him for getting lost in the ecstasy of the experience? And just for a mere moment in time, he felt as if he was able to grasp the rippling waves of reality. He opened his eyes, more focused and determined than he had ever been in his life. With just a small mouthful of the spirit bee nectar, the fierce beast blood that would normally take 3 days to fully absorb could be assimilated in only a few hours. Chu Mo was a little put off. If only he had an endless supply of the liquid, he would have no limits when it came to his growth. He would be heading to the Earth Dragon Beast nest at the crack of dawn. But before that, he was going to spend every waking moment improving himself, as much as was now possible. Chu Mo continuously checked his map. As he flew across the land at an astounding speed, the system alerted him that the Earth Dragon lair was within their vicinity. His heart beat just a little faster as he realized it was just below him. Without a second thought, he dropped from the sky, landing in a crouch before the mouth of the lair. He was immediately impressed. To the common eye, this location seemed to have been picked clean. The average person would pass it by, knowing that any treasure had been long scavenged. The power of Zhou Qi's family was shocking. The ability to hide clues from the investigation team was no small task. He had been hiking for over 10 minutes into the depths of the lair, with no signs that an end was in sight, when the system alerted him to an anomaly to his right. Upon closer investigation, he found a barrier that he couldn't decipher whether it was made naturally or by the hands of men. The fact that his hoarding system was able to crack this barrier and allow him through was another notch in its favor. Without a second thought, Chu Mo pushed his way through. This was it. he had found the rumored heavenly treasure, the 10,000 years essence. As drops rained from the ceiling, a perfect spear caught his attention. Chumo reached up and plucked the item from the air. To the best of his knowledge, it had to be a subproduct of the essence. It was foretold that where the treasures of heaven and earth are born, there are spirits accompanying them. This could prove to be a treasure way beyond anything he had ever experienced. So, before he pushed forward, he stored the item away for safekeeping. All he could go on were the teachings taught at the academy. And that was that the essence must be soaked into the skin. An evil glint sparked across his face. In his opinion, there was only one way to accomplish such a task. He leaped in the air, his clothes flying in opposite directions, shouting like a kid on the first day of summer. 10,000-year essence, here I come. An uncanny sensation enveloped Chumo, an inexplicable weightiness that bore the somber gravitas of eons past. It was as though the very essence of existence, the intricate tapestry of life and death entwined, found their focal point within this hallowed ground. All those primal emotions, echoing through time, coalesced into a resounding torrent of unyielding determination. This formidable surge, redolent with the metallic tang of battle and marked by its unceasing expanse, surged into Chumo. It was an experience of profound spirituality, one that transcended the mundane, casting him adrift in a realm beyond the tangible. The moment the essence had been completely absorbed, he reached up to rise from the pool. This simple gesture sent him flying skyward. The out-of-control nature of his abilities caught him extremely off guard. Upon closer examination, he realized that his wind attribute had seemingly integrated into his body. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't manage to detect the weight of his own body. If this was the result of the essence upon his wind attribute, he had to know what had become of his other talents and physique attributes. He called to the system, which immediately displayed his exact interest. Detecting host attributes. Physique. Advanced cultivation physique. Talent. Superior thunder attribute talent. Superior wind attribute talent. This essence was indeed worthy of its title. Just hours before, because of the spirit nectar, he was able to consume 4 bottles of beast blood in a single sitting. But while amazing, it only increased his strength by 500 points. But the essence, on the other hand, had managed to upgrade his cultivation physique and talent attributes by a whole level each. Sadly, the essence was only effective on the first use. But regardless, Chumo felt the need to collect a bit, just in case. Otherwise, the rest would be left in the pool for future visitors who were destined to wander upon it. He flung the vial into the air before snatching it securely with his hand. He still had 3 days left in the trial. With how hostile the world was going to be to him from this day forward, it was a must that he spent all his time doing everything he could to reach a higher pinnacle of martial proficiency. The 3 days passed by in a flash, and all who had made it through the trial gathered at the Academy's mode of transportation, intent on registering their scores. Their scores wouldn't be secret, as the teacher immediately began to cast them into the public domain. Mei Guangtao, 13 points. Yuan Hani, 6 points. Kui Ning, 21 points. Lu Qian, 19 points. With such low numbers, excitement rose for a few in the crowd. The chances of snatching up second and third place was looking better and better for each of those individuals. It was only a matter of time before Zhou Qi made his way out of the jungle. With no one else being able to match his prowess, second and third place positions were almost assured. To the soon-to-be surprise of them all, Chumo sauntered out of the tree line. His classmates were stunned. There was no way he made it out of the wilderness alive. He wasted no time, stepping straight to the registration table as he emptied out his contents in order to receive his score. This was not what either of his professors expected. The realization of what this meant sent fear coursing through at least one of their bodies. The other got to work, coming up with a grand total of 103 points. The whispers immediately spread through the crowd. How is this possible? The trash pupil couldn't have managed this. There was no doubt in any of their minds whether or not Chumo was the one who harvested these items of his own volition. As the whispering continued, the professors called the student hunting trial to a close. Zhou Qi's underlings' attention turned to the jungle. There was no way the best among them had run into his end. While it made no sense Chumo had to have collected their leader's materials, they weren't the only ones whose thoughts led in this direction. The professor flat out asked Chumo had he ran across Zhou Qi in the jungle. Without an ounce of hesitation, he made sure everyone knew that his answer was a resounding no. So, you have the gals to lie to me. If you didn't run across Zhou Qi, then where did you obtain the horde you dragged in? Chumo led with the simple answer, he haunted them each himself. The other professor stepped in, there was no need for all this. While it's a pity what has seemingly happened to Zhou Qi, how could they rationally blame Chumo for his death? Chumo, the weakest pupil in their academy. His words managed to snap sense into his colleague, who immediately announced Chumo as the first-place winner of the hunting trials. The winners will receive their awards back at the academy. Seeing as how there was a high chance of something dangerous stalking the jungle, there was no way they would be able to commence any type of search for their lost classmates. For the safety of them all, they would be heading back to the academy post-haste. It turned out the teacher wasn't going to be thwarted that easily as he pulled Chumo to the side. I'm going to put this as plainly and as simply as I can. Zhou Qi is dead. And you've returned with the most prey. The Zhou family will target you as the #1 suspect in his death. The best advice I can give you is after you receive your reward, head home and keep a low profile for as long as you can manage. Back at the Zhou residence, in the Liang base, the Zhou family patriarch Zhou Qing received the news that his son Zhou Qi had failed the hunting trials of the academy. After an extensive search, no remains were found. Kunyan was responsible for the early development of the Zhou family's martial apprentices. This was the report handed to him by the academy's heads themselves. But after doing some digging himself, he found out that a strange occurrence took place. The first-place winner of the trial was a crippled human who hadn't yet managed to cultivate. And lo and behold, this individual had a conflict with the young master over a female student of the academy. A cripple took first place? His unbound fury caused the patriarch to unmercifully squeeze his fist until the blood vessels in his pet's eyes ruptured. Ridiculous! Kunyan begged his master to calm down. All the patriarch knew was for things to go so wrong, there had to be a demon. And he would have that demon placed before him. And if the crippled kid was involved, there's a good chance that the secret treasure he sent Zhou Qi after would be in his possession. Chen Xiaoyi made it home a bit later than usual. She felt better than she had in quite some time. She called out to Chumo, but to her surprise he was nowhere to be found. Since that day when they both almost lost their lives, Chumo had been diligently preparing her meals on a daily basis, which was totally out of form for the person she once knew. But before she dug into the delicious meal, it was a must that she train. With only a month left before the school-wide hunting competition, she had to ascend to the realm of martial artists. With goals of taking first place and hunting down the snake, gall of the two-headed python. She couldn't be relaxed in her pursuit of power. While training, her eyes landed on what was unmistakably a very strange mystery. What could be mistaken for nothing but electricity burns was speckled across her equipment. She had no idea how or when something like this could have occurred. An abandoned location on the outskirts of the base. Battle value evaluation. Host basic strength, 9,900 points. Host's attribute, lightning. Enhanced strength, 19,700 points. Chumo had been back from the hunting trials for over a month now. And in half that time he had managed to raise his strength to 9,900 points, where he has remained stagnated ever since. He was on the precipice of moving into the realm of martial artist. But for the time being, he was stuck at the peak of martial apprentice. And no matter how hard he tried, he wasn't able to break through the bottleneck into the next martial realm. He got to the point where he gained nothing from continuing to beat that dead horse. So he figured there was no better time than breaking out the reward he gained from the hunting trials. Bronze level technique, Mist Veil Steps. You begin by gathering most of your elemental energy in your feet, while evenly dispersing the rest around your body. Chumo bounced about with zero control before ultimately having his ankle give in the process, releasing all his energy as he failed, only just managing to catch himself in the last moment. This was a complicated one. Not only did he need to control his elemental energy, but he also needed to pay attention to his breathing, mobilizing the entire body while controlling your heartbeat during rapid movement. He doubted there were many warriors out there who wouldn't have a hard time mastering it. But for him, with his wind attribute talent at the level it was, this technique was tailor-made just for him. Heck, in just a single attempt, he had already figured out a bit of the know-how. To an outside observer, Chumo simply vanished from a standing position. This failed steps as a bronze-level body technique was truly extraordinary. Short-distance teleportation combined with an illusion effect would be a total ace when it came to combat. As the night dragged on, he continued to push himself, intent on mastering this ability before the sun came up. But eventually he decided to call it. It was time to head back to safety. But first, he was going to squeeze out a moment to catch his breath. After all, having to constantly control your elemental energy wasn't for the faint of heart. Chumo's eyes shot up. It seemed fate didn't allow breaks. He wasted no time dropping into a defensive position. When it came to other martial practitioners, it was always best to be wary. You must be Chumo. I'm the old Kunyen. I have come on the orders of my master to invite you to a meeting. I'm not acquainted with your master, nor do I want to be. Please leave. I've already completed my training for the day, and I'm just not interested in additional workouts. My master is Zhou Qing. His strength is at the late stages of his realm, and it won't be long before he breaches the gates to become a martial master. As I'm sure you are aware, he's already considered a strong presence in the entirety of Liang Base. Do you believe it to be wise to be unwilling to give even this bit of face? Zhou Qing had to be Zhou Qi's father. Chumo had been pushing himself hard in preparation for the day when the Zhou family decided to make their move. And it seemed that day had finally come. If your master had chosen to come in person, of course, I would have shown him some face. But he chose to send you instead. Kunyen had had enough of this insolent brat. If the child wasn't willing to come peacefully when offered a respectful gesture, then it left him no choice but to drag the fool before his master himself. He made his move, diving towards Chumo while in a highly agitated state, only to fall clean through an illusion left in Chumo's wake. Kunyen really hadn't expected the child to be capable of mastering this technique in such a short time frame. While the old man spent his time progressing through the shock of his enemy's proficiency, Chumo shifted through the mist to position himself to strike. And just to make sure there was no misunderstanding, he decided to use the sword of Zhou Qi. Kunyen now had all the proof he needed. There was no need for him to hold back. The murderer of his young master was within his sight. The old man foolishly charged forward, seemingly learning no lessons from the first attempt. Glancing back just in time, astonished by the move headed in his direction. Yes, this skill once belonged to Zhou Qi, but Chumo had put in the effort to raise it to void-breaking blade first form. Nothing about this was normal. His master was right. They were dealing with a demon. Kunyen had to use everything at his disposal if he wanted to return this child to his master alive. He would find out exactly what this heathen had done to his young master. Casting his ultimate form, Crimson Hawk Claw, Kunyen's hands shifted into the talons of the fearsome bird of prey. If he wanted to know so badly, Chumo had no problem sending him on a trip to ask him personally. The child's wind attribute talent was the same as his young master's. He couldn't logically put into terms how he had managed to produce a stronger version of the sky-breaking blade. But he would find out, even if he had to interrogate the insufferable little demon. After the two martial practitioners' abilities clashed, Chumo judged the enemy's strength to be in the early stage of the martial artist's realm, with a fire attribute talent that was at best mediocre, with the talent that had risen to superior, and a constitution that was hovering in the higher levels of the trade. The old man was simply nothing to be feared. Kunyen saw his chance and pushed in with all his might. The slight opening was all he needed to break through the child's blade waves. There was no turning back. This tiny demon would meet his end. But the smile on Chumo's face told a different story. This was a trap, and he had waited patiently for his enemy to arrive. Chumo stepped into the line of danger, his hand meeting the old man's face as he let his lightning element loose. Trading positions, the old man's body slammed into the ground, the shockwaves forcing him deeper and deeper into the asphalt. If anyone just happened to be looking in the direction of the abandoned district, they would have caught the amazing light show streaking across the sky. When it was all said and done, the early-stage martial artist lay dead before him. Even though he himself hadn't reached that stage. He was comparable to a mid, or maybe even a late-stage practitioner. But Chumo wasn't a fool. At long last the war had started. Zhou Qing, like his son, was now enemy number one. With it being years since his enemy had stepped into the late stage of the martial artist realm. He was sure that time had been spent honing his craft to a point where Chumo, as he was no match for the elder at his current level. He needed to ascend from the martial apprentice level to the realm of a true martial artist. With no time to do it slowly, Chumo was left contemplating taking the ultimate risk, by venturing deep into the wilderness, and not returning till he broke through his limits in battle. But first, he would need to outfit himself appropriately. So a stop by the martial arts supply hall was a must. At the hall, martial artists traded materials and information, while also receiving tasks issued by different forces and individuals, as a means to earn rewards for the work rendered. If Chumo truly wanted to return from the wilderness, medicines and survival supplies were a must. In the long run, he would gain more, not by shopping around, but by finding a business that would work hard to keep him in their good graces. And for that, the Jade House owned by the famous Jade Business Alliance would more than meet his needs. He was greeted by a top-notch professional, who was ready and waiting to help him attain everything he needed for his jaunt into the wilderness. She praised him for he had chosen well. Their store had a full range of everything he would need, from single survival supplies to full ready-made kits. Chumo chose the luxury set, which went for an exuberant 60 yuan stones. He knew this wasn't small-time cash and did his best to keep his business. But the store owner was indeed impressed. So much money at such a young age meant she was dealing with a very strong martial artist. The commotion outside the store made him completely uneasy in the middle of conducting business. A determined little girl gave all she had to the two warriors. It seemed the task she proposed was just out of their range, even if she was willing to forfeit most of the treasure. The level 2 ferocious two-headed python wasn't something just anyone could take out. In this case, she would need to find someone at the mid-level of martial artists. Her story ran in line with this body's original owner's story. At a young age, she lost her parents. And while she was lucky enough to get adopted, her adoptive mother fell ill. A cure for her mother was the same item Chinzaiwi was doing her best to attain. The heart of the two-headed python was also capable of ridding her mother of the disease. Sadly, only money got you what you needed in this world. And if she had it, maybe she could attract some talent towards her cause. But with only a ferocious beast egg that wouldn't hash for more than 10 years. Who in their right mind would be interested? A level 2 medium ferocious beast wasn't outside the realm of his current capability. And just so have it, the habitat of the python was the Dashu Mountains, the exact destination he was headed to. He couldn't stand to see someone so desperate for the well-being of another. So, there was no doubt he was going to do his best to allow her to lean on him. He gently approached the young girl, inquiring if the task was still available. Hope rose to her eyes and anticipation that someone was willing to take a chance on her behalf. Chumo took her hand as he got down on her level, insisting she head home to patiently wait for the good news. A crowd gathered, completely shocked, while others watched on in awe, thankful that someone was willing to step up on the young child's behalf. The two employees of the Jade House watched the commotion from afar. The young professional didn't wish for harm to be brought upon the young man, and seeing as how they had decided to do what they could for the young girl, She wondered if it would be wise to call him off, but her elder assured her, now that there was someone willing to take the task, there was no need for them to get involved. The young man obviously had a good heart. It was rare in this day and age for someone to stick their neck out for another for something that was hardly worth the effort. The two watched on, appreciative of the rare sight they were blessed to witness. 2 days later, in the wilderness of the Dashu Mountains, within 20 miles of the Luyang base, in a relatively safe area that doubled as the trial location for the base trainees' regular trials, was the closest real wilderness of the Luyang base. Dashu Mountains, while being only 20 miles from his home, encompassed an ultimate distance of over a 100-mile radius. This was the premier location for martial practitioners in his region to solidify their cultivation while hunting for rare and extremely useful supplies. Far removed from the prying gaze of onlookers, Chumo wasted no time unleashing his inner power. He embarked on a relentless assault against the swarming level 2 ferocious iron mantises, decimating a dozen of them over the span of half a day. The transformative impact of this grueling training regimen left no room for doubt. Coupled with the divine benediction of his thunder and lightning talent, his enhanced might had soared to the monumental milestone of 50,000 points. As he turned his unwavering focus to the extraction of the lifeblood from these formidable creatures, the weight of their valuable resources and treasures in tow, his once tempestuous power underwent a gradual refinement, becoming increasingly steadfast and resolute. In just a single day of training, he had managed to take his void-breaking blade to its second level, while his mist-veiled steps were also on the verge of breaking through. Since the very moment of his arrival, he had been putting the two skills through their paces, slicing through and confusing his prey at every opportunity, allowing him to easily dismantle them one after the other. His ultimate goal would be to vanquish the two-headed python. But first, he would need to break through the ceiling into the martial artist's realm. A large group gathered around the clock tower at the Luyang First Academy. The occasion was so great that it warranted the attention of the dean, who would be announcing the academy's general trials. It wasn't lost on anyone that unfamiliar faces were scattered through the crowd. Shinjin, dean of Luyang First Academy, stepped before the crowd of students, announcing that this year's student hunting competition would be different than previous years. The Luyang base and the Chafeng base would be joining together to conduct a dual city trial. The trial wouldn't just be for their school alone, but for all academies and martial schools in Luyang and Chafeng base. This wasn't what the student body expected to hear, but along with the increased participation came increased rewards. This was obviously because the danger of the trial had just significantly increased. The schools had changed a few of the traditional rules. The venue would be shifting a bit further out to the outskirts of the Dashu Mountains, and students would be allowed to team up freely, and was openly encouraged to back out if these new arrangements didn't sit well with them. But such dangers were going to make headway for amazing opportunities. The top 10 teams or individuals would be awarded generous prizes. Included, but not limited to, storage bags, martial arts techniques, beast blood, and primordial stones. This piece of news put smiles on the faces of a large portion of the student body. The greed was apparent, but with the location being the outskirts of the Dashu Mountains, this wouldn't be anything short of a challenge. A part of her was disappointed that Chumo hadn't come. It was for the best, as the trial in its current form was beyond dangerous for him. A mere 3 days ago, Chen Zaiwei had successfully entered the martial artist's realm. And in those 3 short days, her strength had drastically increased. She would make it into the top 10, and retrieve the heart of the two-headed python. When it was all said and done, Chumo would be able to begin his journey as a martial practitioner. Chen Zaiwei's attention was drawn to a commotion. She had expected such behavior. With so many strangers in one location vying for the same rewards, someone was bound to attempt to rise to the top of the pile. Su Guang, the pride of Changfeng base, was intent on making his presence known. In his opinion, the Luyang base was in a slow and steady decline. He doubted there was anyone among this shithole who was capable of fighting, and was betting that the lot of them were scared shitless to attend this year's trial. The Cha-Fong-based thugs felt that the Luoyang-based student body should be honored to be reviewed personally by the pride of their town. After all, Suguang had already reached the mid-stage of martial artist, and possessed a high-level saber technique, which they doubt could be said for any among the Luoyang-based crowd. The boast had the anticipated result, forming a deep rivalry between the two bases. Suguang sucked his teeth, feeling it was probably best to put his new underlings in their place before they got out of control. He let his saber loose, spelling danger for anyone who may have been in its path. The aftermath of the attack sent smoke clouds spreading in all directions, impeding visibility for all in attendance. When the smoke cleared, Chen Ziwei was holding the blade of Suguang, as she explained that private fights were prohibited on the campus of their academy. I didn't expect such a small place like Luoyang Base to have a specimen of such beauty. After giving her a scowl that was fit for a heathen, Suguang casually walked away as the teacher reigned in the crowd. This was only the beginning. He would most definitely meet up with the little beauty in the Dashu Mountains. I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure to support the original creators. Supporting their work will allow us to continue to get amazing chapters in the series. And as always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.